Hey guys, my name is Oxy, and today we're going to be taking a look at advanced movement in Destiny, specifically for the Warlock class. Now, I'm going to try and make this the first of a three-part series where I go over advanced movement for all the classes, but today we're going to be starting out with the Warlock. Now, the first thing I want to address is actually not specific to the Warlock. This applies to all classes, and that is mobility. Mobility does not increase your sprint speed. I'm going to say it again. Mobility does not increase your sprint speed. What it does increase is your strafe speed. So any of this walk speed right here, while I'm aiming down sights as well, if you're in a little gunfight and you're strafing back and forth, that is what mobility increases. Mobility also increases your jump height. So that only applies to your initial jump, not your ability jump. So, boom. That is affected by mobility, but the glide afterwards is not, at least not directly. Now, mobility still has an effect on that indirectly, because your glide is tied to how high you initially jump, and that applies to all the other classes as well. But it's just that first initial jump and your strafe speed that mobility is affected by. Now, there are ways to increase your sprint speed in-game. One of those ways is through exotics. So every class has access to a set of exotic legs that increases sprint speed, increases your slide distance, and does one extra thing. In the Warlock's case, it's the transversive steps, and what these do is they buff your sprint, slide, and they give you a reload when you sprint for long enough. So if I shoot my hand cannon, sprint, you can see it just reloaded. Now, to give you an idea of the slide distance, I'm going to slide once I hit the top of the stairs. Boom, right about to the edge of this podium. Now I'm going to take them off. Same thing. And only about halfway there. So you can see the difference in slide distance there. So exotic armor is one way. Another way is to be carrying a lightweight weapon. If you have a lightweight frame, you get better handling and you move faster with the weapon equipped. This does mean sprint speed. So when I have this out, I'm running faster than normal. If I switch to a weapon without it, like my sniper, I'm running just a little bit slower. It's not very easy to tell visually, but it is there. One important thing to note is that you can only stack 2 sprint buffs at a time. Now this doesn't matter too much for the Warlock, because it doesn't really have any innate sprint buffs in the subclass trees, but if you have the weapon and the exotic, you're at the maximum sprint speed. Okay. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk Warlock Glide. So the way Warlock Glide works is it's all momentum based. This is the Warlock's greatest strength and the Warlock's greatest weakness when it comes to jumping. So if I jump and activate my glide airly, I get a lot of upward momentum because the glide inherits the upward momentum from my jump. Like so. Now if I jump and wait to activate my glide, I won't go nearly as high because I won't have any upward momentum. You can see I hover right here. And then slowly drop. What this means is that as a Warlock, once you start moving downwards in the air, you cannot move back up until you touch the ground again. There's no way for you to move upwards in the air with your glide as a Warlock. So if I jump, I'm falling. I can only slow down my fall. I can't go back up like a hunter or a titan can with double jump or a catapult lift. And boom. Once again, only falling. So this is a huge weakness for Warlock because they can't regain height while in the air. But because of the way momentum works, this also lets them do a lot of crazy stuff, which we'll get to in a little bit. Alright, now that we've covered the basics of the glide, let's talk about the individual glides themselves. So you get 3 glides: strafe glide, burst, and balanced. I want to be honest, balanced is not the greatest. It's kind of trying to be a middle ground between these two, and it just doesn't do anything quite as good as the other two. Strafe glide gives you better direction control in air, and this is a really underrated glide, I feel like. A lot of Warlocks will just ignore this glide and go straight to burst. And that's kind of a shame because you get an insane amount of aerial control in air with this. It's really good for jumping puzzles. It's also just good in general and PvP for being able to strafe and maneuver around the map. So if you're a beginner Warlock player, I would strongly recommend starting out on this guide. glide, sorry, and only going to burst glide once you feel like you've gotten enough control. Now, burst glide gives you a strong initial boost of speed. You don't have the same level of control that you do with strafe glide. As you can see, I can't really circle the podium here very well. I can only go out and back. But the initial speed that you get allows you to do a lot of cool stuff, like Warlock skating, which we're going to cover in a little bit. So, in general, just choose between strafe glide and burst glide. Both are great options. Don't underrate the strafe glide. Now, Warlock is the only class in the game with a subclass specific jump, and that is Blink. Now, Blink is pretty cool because it's actually a short range teleport, as you can see there. So it activates just like any other jump in the game. You have to do your normal jump off the ground first and then hit your jump key again in midair. And like all the other Warlock jumps, it's momentum based. So if I activate it soon after my jump, while I'm going upwards in the air, the blink will go up. If I wait, it'll go more forward. And then if I'm already falling down, like from somewhere high, it will blink me forward, a little up, and a little down. Blink inherently has a little bit of upwards momentum to it, but it's not that much, so you can't really rely on it too much. As you can see, the upwards momentum there kept me from falling, and so I just sort of stayed even in an even line. Blink is really cool, and there's a lot you can do with it. It's probably the best jump in the game for PvP, but we're going to cover the advanced stuff for that a little bit later after we've covered all the basics. One last thing I want to mention for Warlock movement in the basics is rift placement. Now, Warlock is a really aerial class. Almost all of Warlock's mix-ups come from aerial stuff. All your jukes are in the air. You're not really a ground-based class the way Titan and Hunter are. But because you have your rift, there are a few interesting things you can do. So when you're casting your rift, you can actually cast your rift in a sliding animation. Now, counterintuitively, you can't actually cast your rift while you slide. You can see there I try to press the button and it just says no, I'm not allowed, I'm locked into a slide. But what you can do is if you cast the rift while you're sprinting, don't press your slide key, just cast the rift, it will go into a little mini slide animation there, which is really useful for getting yourself just like around cover or getting that last little couple inches into safety in order to cast your rift. Now, there's one other thing to keep in mind with the rift, and that is to use your rift to peek. So, let's say, for example, I'm over here, and I know there's a sniper sitting somewhere, maybe up on top of there, maybe over there, I'm not sure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this corner and I'm going to cast my rift, but because I go into third person, I'm going to turn my camera so I can actually see around the corner and use the third person to get some information. So cast the rift, turn, and I can see if anyone was there without exposing myself because I'm still behind the wall here. So good Warlock players will constantly be just doing that automatically in order to see around corners, and they'll be incorporating the rift slide into their gameplay to get it into cover much faster. Alright, now we're going to start getting into the more advanced stuff, and the first thing we're going to cover is Warlock skating. There's a couple of different ways you can do Warlock skating. It has the most variance compared to Titan, and even if you're in console, you can do the base level of Warlock skating. So at the base level, you're going to want to be using Burst Glide, because that has the most speed. And because Warlock Glide is momentum based, if we activate our jump as we're going up from our initial jump, that means that we'll go high in the air. So this is okay. You can get a tiny little burst of speed there. Not too bad. But what we want to do is we want to delay our glide activation until right after we've hit the apex of our jump. That way our glide will be taking us almost completely forward and then also slightly down to hit the ground sooner so we can activate another glide sooner. So what that looks like is... And you can hear how the cadence of my glide there was a little bit faster than when I did it like this. Because when I do it like this, I'm spending more time in the air. It's worth noting that Warlock gliding works best with lower mobility for when you're trying to skate because it'll keep you out of the air. You actually want to spend as little time as possible in the air, apart from your quick glide for burst, so that you can get back to the ground and get another glide off. Now that's the most basic level, and you can do that on console, controller, keyboard and mouse, it doesn't matter. But we can take it up a notch further if you're on keyboard and mouse by binding your jump to scroll wheel. What this lets us do is we can spam our jump key just by scrolling our scroll wheel down. Like that. So I'm hitting several jump inputs a second just by slowly rolling my finger over the scroll wheel. And when you start going with your sprint, you get a nice rhythmic cadence going that lets you zip around the map a little bit faster than normal sprint speed on the other classes. Now sometimes you will have to incorporate a normal glide there like I did there to get over obstacles. Sometimes you can just skate right over them. No big deal. This is level 2 of Warlock skating. And if this is all you get, this is pretty good. This will get you through most stuff fine. Now there is a third level, the most advanced level of Warlock skating, and that is where we combine the two concepts that we just introduced. So we're going to do the scroll wheel jump, but we're going to wait till we're going downwards. So we're going to do a normal jump, scroll down, and you can see it launched me down into the ground and then back up. So the sequence you would do is jump normally, then scroll wheel down into the ground, then jump normally, scroll wheel down, jump normally, etc. Just like that. And you can see you can get, if you time it just right, you can get a little boost into a super jump there off the ground. But sometimes you don't want to do that because it'll expose you, like if it pops you up above cover right here. So you really have to practice that method of skating a lot to get it good, to the point where you might want to use it in a PvP match. Mostly I just stick with the base skate, but depending on your skill level and how comfortable you are, you can mix it up. So you have, once again, you have the basic, where you're just hitting the jump, boom, like this. You have the intermediate skate, where you're using the scroll wheel, and then you have the advanced skate, where you're skating down into the ground. Alright, so now we have our basic skating down, and we're going to take this a step further and introduce sword skating. So the basic sword skate that all classes can do is you sprint, jump, and swipe, and that takes you forward a little bit, but it kind of kills your momentum. So what Warlocks can do that no other class can do is, right after you swing your sword, you hit your glide button to cancel the end of that sword animation, which keeps your momentum going, because remember, glide inherits your momentum. So the way it works, boom, like that. You can see we went much, much farther. And the timing is very quick. You want to basically swing glide whenever you're doing this. So swing glide, boom, swing glide. It's almost like one word. Just like that. And you can see that is very, very fast movement around the map. You can do this with any sword. Doesn't have to be Worldline. It can be any sword. And you can even do this with carryable orbs. So anytime you're in PvE and you get those orbs for a raid or a mission or whatever, you can do the exact same thing with the slam attack that those orbs have. And here's a little tip. Even if the orbs are the kind where you throw when you click your fire button, you can still do the dash, because if you hit your melee button, they'll do the melee attack, which allows you to skate with them. So Warlock movement with swords is by far the best of any class. Now, if you have the Worldline Zero Exotic Sword, you can do something even cooler than that, which is Worldline Skating. So the Worldline, the way it works is when you sprint, you get a little buff. You can see that on the side of my screen, Temporal Sprint. And when I hit my heavy attack, I'll do that cool little blink. Now, the really cool thing is with Warlock, if you do this attack off a raised edge, like right here, and you hit your glide right as your character disappears and is about to reappear, you will launch yourself across the map. Like so. Now, something I want to go over that you can use on its own or link into the Worldline skating is the healing grade on Middle Tree Dawnblade. So this is Divine Protection, and it's a grenade where you can charge it up, and if you throw it, it'll give you an overshield. If you charge this up while you're gliding, it will actually allow you to continue your momentum much longer than you normally would with just a basic glide. So for example, I can hang out here all day. I'm basically flying. Now it will wear off after a certain point, but as for how much ground you can cover, just using this, it's pretty crazy. Now, just a quick tip, by the way, if you are holding your grenade, there's a couple of ways to cancel it. One of the most obvious ways is you can cancel it with a melee, which is fine. But the problem with that is if you cancel with a melee, it also cancels your glide at the same time. The best way to cancel it that I've found is when you're in the air, to just tap your sprint button. And that will stop it from charging without canceling your glide. So that's going to be important for these next tips. The really cool thing is when you get this going with Worldline, because this momentum charge applies to the momentum from Worldline. So it's hard to show on this map because even though it's a big PvP map, it's still too small for the amount of mobility this gives you. But you can massively extend the distance from your Worldline skate just by holding the grenade out. Boom. Alright, now we're going to start talking about some of these subclass specific options. We kind of already started with the heal grenade, but I'm going to go up to Top Tree Dawnblade, probably the best in-air subclass in the game. And this tree is pretty fun because you have an air dodge. This is the Icarus dash. So this functions pretty much just like a hunter dodge, except instead of reloading your gun or giving you your melee back, it works in the air, which is pretty cool. And you can see it has only a 6-second cooldown, which is crazy, crazy low. That is a very low cooldown. You can use this a lot. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this dodge. I find that the best way to start with it is to just focus on it as a hunter dodge that you can use in the air. So a lot of players will try to abuse it. They'll get high in the air and then they'll try and dodge into cover. That's okay. You don't really want to be using it too much out in the open or in the air. I find the best way to use it is just, if I'm here, let's say I'm in a gunfight, boom, instantly into cover like that. Because you can hit your jump key and the dodge key almost at the same time to move yourself immediately. You can't use the dodge while you're on the ground, you can only use it in the air. But because you can hit your jump key and the dodge key at the same time, you'll just immediately proc the dodge. And so even though you're in the air, you're basically just like an inch off the ground, and it functions just like a normal dodge. One of the biggest things to keep in mind with this dodge is that because Warlock is so momentum based, this dodge doesn't work very well going against your momentum. So let's say I'm going to glide across that line of sight there and I want to dodge back. You can see it's like I kind of hit a wall there because I'm working against my own momentum. Whereas if I try to do the same thing but dodge the other way, much better because I'm using my own momentum with the dodge. So in general, I would try to work with the dodge that way. You can kind of game it a little bit by turning your aim to try and change the direction you're going. But in general, I would say try to work with your momentum, not against it when you're using this dodge. There's a couple more things to keep in mind with the dodge. So this is really good for lane peeking. Now when you're running this dodge, you're running Top Tree Dawnblade, and Top Tree Dawnblade can shoot an ADS while in the air without losing the glide. This is something that only this subclass can do, not any others. So what you can do is you can dodge into line of sight, wait, fire a couple shots, and then dodge out. Dodge yourself into cover like that with your glide. And in general, it's just a really good evasive subclass. I find that it's best not to go high in the air with this subclass because you'll be a sitting duck. unless you're trying to get a really, really cheeky pick with a snipe on some weird angle. Like if you go all the way up here, come out around the corner, nobody's expecting you, boom, and then you dodge away so they can't get the shot on you. Something like that, but if you're just going for a normal primary, my advice is to keep it low to the ground so you have options to change your direction. Alright, now we're going to talk about Blink. The most broken jump in the game, potentially, if you're good enough to use it. So keep in mind all the basics I've told you about already. Blink is momentum based. It's direction based. So I can't be going in this direction and change my strafe and try and like go backwards with the blink. It will go in the direction you're already moving, and you can't really mix up like that with blink. Now you do have an exotic option, which is the Astrocyte burst. This basically lets you blink further. You get to blink a little more often. The main reason to use this is the fact that your weapon readies more quickly and your radar stays up. The main reason you want to use this is because when you blink, you keep your radar, which can be really helpful for blink scenarios when you're going in to make an aggressive play on someone with blink, because half the time you don't even know where you are, even if you set it up pretty well, and they certainly don't know where you are. So having your radar up to immediately tell, like, oh, he's behind me, he's to the left of me, whatever, that is super important. Now I find a lot of players will try and use blink in a really basic way. Like, let's say there's somebody right here by the truck, and maybe he has another teammate behind him, and I'm just going to use blink to go over the top of the truck and try and fight them like this. And in my opinion, this is a pretty stupid way to use blink. It's not very good. You can sometimes catch people off guard. Like, let's say I know there's somebody behind the truck there, and I have a shotgun. Like, this is a shotgun, not a sniper rifle. I can blink over top, he doesn't see me, boom, shotty in the face, and he's dead. But the real strength of blink, I find, is allowing you to use it as a mix-up tool against multiple opponents. So, recap the same thing. Let's say there's a guy like right here, and then he has another teammate like right back here as well. So, let's say I'm approaching the same situation with a shotgun. I run up to the corner, I'm going to jump, shoot, blink behind, and then get the next guy. Now, my shot didn't go off there because I didn't hit the trigger fast enough, but that's the general idea. Jump, shoot, blink, and get the next guy. The execution is pretty hard to get, but the basic principle is still there. This can also be used for just peeking lanes. The way it works is, if I jump a lane, I can fire a shot and then blink away. Boom, I'm into cover. And you can see how fast that is. That's even better than the Icarus dash, because with the Icarus dash, I still exist. I'm still exposing myself and they can see where I go. With this, I'm instantly into cover and safety. Now, this obviously works best with low fire rate weapons that do high damage per shot, so like a hand cannon would be really good. A sniper rifle, if you can pull the shot off, is like insane. Like, imagine, boom. Oh, I hit the wall there. But come in, boom, and you're into cover. Something crazy like that. And like I was saying before, you can also do it with shotguns. Blink, and then shoot the guy behind him. Just like that. So blink it's extremely powerful, but it takes a lot of practice to get right, and there's a lot of finesse and timing that you need to understand. And it just takes a lot of time to get down. Alright, so to finish things up, we're going to talk about super movement. Warlock is kind of interesting because Warlock has a bunch of different movement options for supers. Way more than any other class. Now, we're going to take a look at Dawnblade. Obviously, this is the fastest super in the game. It's insanely fast. You can go blitzing around the map at top speeds, and you're really hard to hit. And because it's ranged, you can basically cover the entire map if you're good with it. Now, it's actually so fast to the point where a lot of people struggle to control the super, and they'll often send themselves flying into, you know, objects like this, and they'll kind of be clumsy, and they'll be like, oh, I can't. And they don't really look graceful or in control the way they kind of should. You can see there, it's like I'm overshooting the corner, I get stuck on the ledge. It's stuck under there. Like, this is just clumsy movement. I'm not controlling my super very well. So the way to control your Dawn Blade better is to remember sort of the fundamental principles of glide skating, where we delay our boost to get more downwards momentum and forward speed. So if I delay my glide in the super, it keeps me a lot lower to the ground. I have a lot more control over where I go. Now, one of the really cool things about this is you can actually get so much power out of the Dawn Blade glide that you can use it to change directions in midair. So I'm gonna activate, I'm gonna jump that way, and I'm gonna glide that way. And you're gonna see the difference. So we're going, I'm gonna jump, turn my aim, and glide. And boom, you see I actually changed directions there. That was almost a 90-degree turn. Once again, boom, and turn. Not quite 90 degrees, but it's close enough, right? Like, I'm not banging into stuff now. I can even almost switch my direction going the other way. Boom, and glide that way. I lose a little bit of speed, but I still get to change directions. So this is like the main fundamental you have to master in order to use your Dawn Blade effectively. Is being able to just navigate your way around the map quickly and efficiently without bumping into stuff, and while being able to throw your swords as well. Now, this is not the only movement option Dawn Blade has. If you're running Top Tree, you get Infinite Icarus Dash. And I'm sure I don't have to explain how this can be insane for movement and mix-up potential. You can even throw your normal Icarus Dash after the super ends. If you get good with this, you can absolutely style on people running something like Golden Gun, even if it's 6-shot. Do notice that every time I dodge, it's taking a little chunk of my super energy, so you can't spam it. And this is why you still want the fundamentals of being able to glide and change your strafe, because if you're using your dodge to change directions, which you can do, you're going to be wasting your super, and you're not going to be as efficient with your super. So, in my opinion, you should not be using your dodge for movement unless you really need to change directions, like you're going off the map or something, or if you're dueling another super, or there's a sniper, and you're actively using it in combat to try and avoid damage. Bottom tree is much the same story. You don't have an in-air dodge, but you do still have your Phoenix Dive, which will actually deal damage. I find that this can be a really useful option if you're too high in the air, like if there's a sniper over there. Just get yourself down. You do want to be careful using it, as it does expose you, both when you're doing the start of the animation and at the end. If you're dueling a ground-based super like an Arc Strap or something, if you've already weakened them with one of your blades, you can try using this for the kill, but it's a very high-risk move because you get locked into the ground pound animation so long that if you do not kill them with this, they are almost certainly going to just spin around and like swipe you, and you're going to die there. So for the most part, when you're dueling other supers, you want to stay high. When you're chasing players, you want to stay a little bit lower to the ground so you can move around faster and so you don't get hit with a snipe. Now, I do want to talk about Top Tree Stormcaller. We haven't really talked about Stormcaller at all, but Top Tree has some interesting movement options in Super because of the Ionic Blink. Bottom Tree, not quite so much. You really only have the landfall, but Top Tree has some really cool movement options. So, Top Tree Stormcaller gets a blink when you press the Shift key, or whatever your sprint button is. Now, this functions pretty much very similar to the normal blink. You can see it's momentum based, it's direction based. The one difference compared to normal blink is I can activate it while I'm on the ground. So you can kind of use this as like a tracer blink on the ground to get the jump on people. I find it does help to go vertical with it because it'll mix people up. But you do want to try and kind of mix it up as best you can so that you're not too predictable. You can also mix your glide in with the blink to cover more distance. Just remember, it is movement based, So as soon as you input your glide, you're kind of locking yourself into that vector. So if I try to blink backwards, right there, you can see I didn't really go in a different direction. Once you get the glide on, you're trading maneuverability for distance. See, I was actually holding back there, but I still went forward because my glide was engaged. Still went forward. Whereas if I just jump, I can go back very easily. So glide can be useful, but you want to be careful when you're using it with that super. Last thing I want to cover is blink with the void supers. Now, one of the main ways you'll see blink used with Nova Bomb, specifically bottom tree, is sort of a Nova Bomb slam dunk, where essentially this is used for super shutdown. So let's say there's like an Arc Strider or a Striker Titan coming at me on this lane. I know he's going to charge me, like it's pretty much guaranteed. So I wait till he gets close, and then I go blink and throw the Nova Bomb. Now I actually messed that up there, and that shows you have to delay the Nova Bomb. That's how you want to do it. You want to wait till you hit the apex of your blink, and then you toss it more or less straight down, right on top of them. It gets you out of harm's way. They're probably not going to hit you if you time the blink right, and they get hit with the super. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory, not much to it. But things get interesting when we go to Nova Warp and incorporate blink with Nova Warp. Now, Nova Warp has its own built-in blink, just like Stormcaller. However, this blink does not override your other blink, your jump blink. And this can make for some really interesting movement options, especially when you pair with Astrocyte Verse. Now, Astrocyte Verse has something cool where it allows you to blink twice per blink because of the faster blink. So you can see there, I can cover an insane amount of ground from the top of these steps, almost all the way to that angle. And for like half the time, I'm in my blink, so it's hard to see me, it's hard to hit me, it's hard to know where I'm going. When you're in Nova Warp, you can use the blink to get high, and then use your dash to get around, and then to drop down on people. You can also combo your dash and your blink and alternate them, like you saw me do there. So pop, boom, boom, and absurd distance. I just crossed like an entire sniper lane and I'm on the point just seconds after stepping out of cover from here. Let me get rid of this real quick so I can recast. Once again, I'll show you how that works. So we go blink, dash, charge, boom. One other thing to keep in mind with this subclass is that you can initiate a charge for the attack while you're also in the middle of a dash. So if I go here, I can dash straight into a charge. And if I want, I can actually buffer an attack at the end of the dash. It's a light attack, obviously, so you're not going to one-shot anybody. But that is an option for you as well. Interestingly, this class also works incredibly well with Burst Glide because the momentum transfers from the Burst Glide to the blink. So, go up. And you can see I'm getting quite a bit more mileage out of those dashes because I'm using the momentum from the Burst Glide. Now, you do sacrifice a little bit in terms of unpredictability because you don't have the second blink to make yourself really crazy and hard to hit, but you do get a lot of just raw cross-map speed. And the nice thing is, these blinks compared to the Stormcaller Ionic Blink are a lot better at changing direction. You can see they're not so bound by momentum, which is really helpful. They don't really inherit momentum in the same way as the normal blinks do, but the cool thing is that while you're using your Burst Glide, you're still sort of moving in that direction. So they essentially change the direction of the momentum, and they're pretty much the only Warlock dodge or dash that is actually able to change momentum like that. So you can see I almost went in a whole circle around this giant ass building here. Alright, so that's going to do it for the guide. I'm going to just leave you guys with a quick recap of how you want to approach Warlock. As a Warlock, your mobility and your strength is generally going to be in air, and you kind of want to try and capitalize on that. Now, you don't want to be all the way up in the air where you're just a sitting duck. You kind of want to find that happy medium where you're just off the ground and are using your movement abilities that are all aerial based to kind of give you the edge in combat. Whether it's the blink, whether it's the dodge, whether you're just using your movement abilities to get a third person peek around a corner. You can do a lot of crazy stuff with Warlock. You just have to know how to do it. The last thing to keep in mind is to really take advantage of the movement options in your super. Warlock has by far the best movement options of any class in super. They just take a bit more time to master and a bit more finesse. So I hope this guide was helpful. If you learned anything, be sure to leave a like. I am going to do a guide just like this for Hunter Advanced Movement and Titan Advanced Movement. So if you want to see those, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss them. If you learned anything, be sure to let me know what it was down in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next one.